Welcome, everyone. My name is Jason R. Levine, also known as Fluency MC, and I'm so excited to be back once again to do a webinar with American TESOL Institute. This time our topic is teaching listening, a topic that many of you have asked us to do. This is also brought to you by Prep It. These webinars on Zoom, Prep It Fluency. So shout out to Prep It. And if you don't know already, American TESOL Institute has a series of webinars for English language teachers that we call Featured Teachers, hosted by yours truly, Fluency MC. Ask the Experts is another series that actually connects directly with featured teachers. It follows featured teachers about a week later. Ask the Experts is different because it's a small group of teachers that can ask questions in a small group setting. And we just did this with Jennifer, and it was fantastic. Want to also remind everybody to join Innovative Teachers of English, a group where I'm a co-admin. We are the biggest and most active group of English language teachers on Facebook. When you consider communication in English, I don't know how scientific it is anyway, but it is interesting. If we're looking at the 4 skills in communication, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, how much time do you think we spend speaking compared to listening, reading, writing? As you can see, it's considerably more than speaking. When we talk about listening, there are really 2 parts of it, and it's very, very useful, I believe, from my experience, to start looking at listening this way, to look at top-down listening versus bottom-up listening. Top-down listening, and it's not, we're talking about top-down knowledge. This is not just in listening, but when we talk about listening skills, what we mean is what we know from past experience, right? So in our first language, when we're listening to somebody talk about something they've done, if we know the person, we know the type of story they're telling or the kind of situation, we're tuning in, but we're certainly not focusing on each word, phrase, or sentence the way we would if we didn't already have some knowledge and understanding. Needless to say, in our first language and culture, this is used much, much more. Right? Intuitively, subconsciously, it just happens. And it's why we're able to do other things while we're listening, kind of half listen, and still get enough of the main idea of what the person's talking about and the important details of what they're talking about. Bottom-up listening, on the other hand, is not using this knowledge that we've had in the past and our experience to understand the message we hear, but instead looking at individual words, sounds actually first, building all the way to sentences. And as you can imagine, this is very different than top-down, and I hope you can also imagine that both are necessary, and automatically we do both in our first language and in other languages that we're learning. The question is, what should we as teachers help our learners develop? Well, the answer is both top-down and bottom-up listening, but depending on our learners' levels, the way they like to learn, the time we have with them, how much experience they've had listening, how much experience they've had being around people who are first language English speakers, or in environments where everybody's speaking English all the time, or they're hearing English all the time, as opposed to those who hardly ever do. So all of the different variables that we have to consider as English language teachers generally, but looking at listening in particular, that's what I'd like to do with everyone here today. First thing that may seem obvious, but it's not always so obvious, I find, when I've observed teachers, at least not in practice, is to do many, many listenings. And sometimes I feel that, and I've heard that from teachers, that they don't do this because in the real world, we only hear something once. Well, that's true. But as I often say, learning English as a skill is like learning anything as a skill. Playing the piano, playing volleyball, learning a dance, right? So if there's a moment where we perform the dance, or we play a volleyball game, or we have to listen during a meeting, right? That's performance. That's the moment where we're using English as opposed to practice. Practice involves repetition. We need to practice something many, many times to be able to do it well when we have the chance, one chance here, one chance there, one chance there. When we're more stressed, when it matters. Activities, it shouldn't just be listen, check the script, or just listen and explain what happened. When to use a text. This is very, very important, and there are many different ideas about this. People talk a lot about subtitles, right? Should you watch something with the subtitles or without the subtitles, or first without or first with, or read something first, then listen to it, listen to something first, then read. There is no right or wrong answer to these questions. However, there are some important things I'd like to point out about when to use text and when not to use text, again, from my experience as a teacher and teacher trainer. And the last thing here goes without saying, but once again, sometimes things that go without saying we take for granted or we forget, and that's that when our learners are stressed for whatever reason, whether they think they're not good at learning, whether the listening is too difficult, whether they just haven't had the experience, whatever it is, if they are more stressed, then they're going to have a much harder time building listening skills than if they are relaxed and hopefully enjoying what they're doing. I'd like to talk about activities to do before listening with top-down as a focus, during listening, and after listening. So we're going to talk about top-down activities first and then move into bottom-up activities. So read and discuss the topic, look at images. So before listening to something, build the knowledge of that topic, whether it's a news report that's talking about sports, or it's a story with specific characters in the story and a plot. If it is something more academic, like an academic lecture, biology, art history, whatever it is, can you help your students through discussion, through pictures? Pictures are so important. Get a sense of what it is they're going to hear. It is true that they won't have those opportunities in real life, and that's exactly why we need to do this differently in a more controlled classroom environment, or if they're doing things online. More specifically, right, you could have them predict information, predict what's going to happen based on information you give them. So for example, you can tell them the title of the story, or what on the TOEFL exam, they might say, listen to a professor from an art history class. Today they are discussing portrait painting from the Netherlands in 1780, right, or whatever, whatever information before you listen that can help the students. Conversation functions, that they're going to hear something that's going to include people asking for information, requests for information, or making apologies, or expressing their opinions, agreeing and disagreeing, and making predictions about it, especially in pairs and small groups, right? They could think about, well, if the title is this, what it's going to be about. Comprehension questions, which traditionally you listen and you answer the questions, but you could look at those questions ahead of time. The idea being that as they're learning, as they're building top-down knowledge, you are kind of helping them cheat in these ways, giving them information before, so that when they have a listening later, they have more experience, they have more knowledge they can bring to that moment where they're listening and usually hearing something just one time. Pre-teaching vocabulary, don't overwhelm them, and translate only when you have to. It can be great to use the student's first language if, very quickly by translating a word or a phrase, they get it, especially if it's something that's hard to explain. But otherwise, similar words in English is just going to help them more, build their vocabulary more, and get more comfortable hearing you and listening to things in English. I would say don't show the text at first. We can debate this, and it depends on what it is. And we're going to look, when we talk about bottom-up processing and bottom-up listening skills, lots of great ways to use text. But for top-down, I would say don't show the text first. Give them a chance to try to get the main idea, to understand basic things going on from these other things that you've done, okay, before you're giving them a text, because the text is going to trigger the bottom-up processing, and that's not what we're trying to do here. So I have a song called The Right Chemistry, and I wanted to use this song today to demonstrate some different activities, both top down and bottom up. So if you don't know me, those of you who are here live, those watching, I do a lot of different things as an English teacher, but mainly I write songs to help students practice English. This is the title. And to demonstrate what I mean about top down, by saying, well, you could ask your students, what did they think about this title? When I talk to students about this song, I say, do you think this song's about science? Or if they're a little bit lower level, do you think the song is about science or love? Right? So that could be a discussion. Well, if it's about love, do you have an expression in your language like this? The right chemistry, maybe some body language. Two people meet and phew, there's the right chemistry. So the different predictions could be made. What is the story? It's a song, but it's a story. What is it about, right? And a picture. So this is a picture from the video. This could get the students talking and thinking, what is the story about? If it's about two people meeting and feeling the right chemistry, then what could they predict could happen next? And to pre-teach vocabulary, there's a lot of new vocabulary for most students in this song, but from the chorus, and the chorus is very important for the students to get to, feel encouraged to understand the song, to take the time then to try to figure out what's going on in the verses of the song. So take a look, because we're going to be using this song as an example throughout. So while listening, what's happening top down? For example, if the idea is not to try to understand everything, just try to get the main idea using the top down knowledge gained from the activities before listening, right? Which involves what? Guessing what's going on whenever you can, right? Stopping the listening at certain points. Don't need to do the whole thing. Maybe you don't have time to do the whole thing anyway. And many times it's good to break it up. And one reason for top down, if you break it up and ask, okay, what happened? What might happen next? Right? To confirm or to realize, it's not what we thought. This can make it easier to keep going. Sequence and order headings and pictures. For example, not with the text, still not working with text yet, but if the song, as The Right Chemistry is, I'll explain in a moment, has different parts, then could you beforehand ask the students to consider what part comes first? Like, who is this character in this part or that part, to kind of bullet point the main things that have happened. You can do this ahead of time with pictures, try to put them in the right order. And then while you're listening, put them in the right order. It can be done with text too, but that's coming later. Signposts, words that are used, often adverbials, but sentence connectors, ways to link information, to highlight different parts of a text, whether it's spoken or written. So emphasis words like, moreover, and adjectives and adverbs too, like, noun clauses. What's really important to know is, a contrast, scientists used to believe blah, blah, blah. However, new evidence suggests, right? So signposts, emphasis words, transition words. This is really important also because it will help students when they're reading to find key information, especially if they're preparing for standardized tests, and in their writing. If you do a lot of focus on signposts in listening and reading texts, and students really get it, then instead of having to teach them how to use them when they write, they will more naturally use them when they write. Use video whenever possible. I strongly believe this. I put already here, build students' knowledge of visual cues, because sound cues, wow, if you're just working with sound cues, that's bottom up. If you're working with sound cues and some top-down knowledge, that's nice. But what about all of the top-down knowledge we have from our experience looking at people when they speak, you know, their facial expressions, how they move their hands, other body language? This is huge. Other reasons to use video: help students focus more. It can be very, very hard to focus when it's just listening to someone, and it's more interesting. Another reason, people say, well, on the telephone, you don't have any visual clues, or, you know, listening, you don't always have the benefit of video. Exactly, and that's why when we're practicing, we need to load the student up with these visual cues. When we're on the phone, we are using all our top-down knowledge and experience of what subconscious, right? We're not thinking about it, but you know, how that person seems, their expressions, all of that is happening based on our experience face to face. So I'll stop there before I keep going about video, but use video whenever possible. Remember I said about sequencing, thinking about which part of the listening where you are, and it can be done with characters. For example, in my song, The Right Chemistry, one person in the couple, one of them tells the story first from his or her point of view. So which one starts? Is it the woman or the man? Well, take a look. I'll show you the first part of the video, and again, showing video without text, there are no subtitles here. See if you can catch, right, the main idea. See if you can catch some of that vocabulary in the chorus that we talked about before. Here we go. When is it supposed to click? The right chemistry, sparks flying, and endlessly. We tend to see the person of our dreams. You might find you've lost your mind. Love may not be what it seems. One afternoon on a walk, he met this woman, her eyes locked. His throat was locked, he gave her his number. That evening she called him and they talked. They had so much to chat about. There was no doubt that they were perfectly matched and that he had to ask her out. She said already could tell she liked him, but knew she could hurt him even more. He bought some flowers. In an hour he arrived at her door. She let him in, she seemed uneasy. They got ready to leave. He began to wonder if he and she were meant to be. He thought, when is it supposed to click? The right chemistry, sparks flying, energy endlessly. We tend to seek the person of our dreams. You might find you've lost your mind. Love may not be what it seems. When is it supposed to click? The right chemistry, sparks flying, energy endlessly. We tend to seek the person of our dreams. You might decide that love is blind, but it may not be what it seems. What about after listening? What top-down activities can you do? So now, were you correct? If you're a student, if you're a teacher, you're helping your students. Again, pairs and small groups, great for this, right? If you are teaching a private lesson, it doesn't work as well. But yeah, pairs, small groups. Were your predictions correct? What about the sequence? Who spoke first, or whose perspective was it in the song? Were the characters who you thought they'd be? Again, with video, before they even see a picture, what do they think they're going to look like? Is it going to be a younger person or older person, different type of person they thought beforehand? Did they catch any of the vocabulary? Go back and look. Let's do that really quickly. Zoop, 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 zoop. So we go back. Did you hear any of this vocabulary? This is not a test, right? Just see, oh, could they catch any of it? And we're going to do multiple listenings, so it's okay if they didn't. How much, however, can the students figure out? up before they see the text with your help. That is huge. They're going to listen again. So what do they know? Help them feel confident, right? Oh, they got that word. They heard that word. Yeah, energy endlessly, or right? They didn't understand everything, but they think that, the man feels this. Oh, well, definitely they both feel something. Look together at parts of the text, maybe not all of it. In this case, let's look at the chorus, which includes vocabulary that we were using to pre-teach ahead of time. So when is it supposed to click? The right chemistry, sparks flying, energy endlessly. We tend to seek the person of our dreams. You might decide that love is blind, but it may not be what it seems. You can start thinking about the grammar in here if you like. We're going to get to that just a moment when we start talking about bottom up, which I think we're going to do right now. What do you know? Bottom up skills, bottom up processing, or bottom up listening. You may remember from the beginning of the session, we're talking about not our knowledge and experience with the topic, the situation, the context, but looking more under the microscope at the sounds in syllables in words in phrases in sentences, how we have both top-down and bottom-up knowledge that we bring to something we read or listen to, and we need both. There's some dangers, some hazards with bottom-up, right? If you're trying to understand everything and translate what you hear in real time, I have this problem in French, I'll confess. So, right? I don't practice what I preach so well in French. I catch myself all the time, right? Chasing, as I wrote here, what's that word? What's that idiom, right? Or chasing, grammar words, which we're going to get to in a moment because of the stress time nature of English. This is huge for bottom up, right? If your students are just, it's all going over here, like they can read the text and be like, that's easy. But if they hear it, nothing, they're using probably too much bottom up energy, not enough top down. But it's not just enough to help our students develop top down skills. We do need to develop bottom up skills, but how to do that? And it's certainly not, just try to learn all these vocabulary words. You should be able to catch them when you listen, no problem. What's wrong with you? And just keep listening and you'll figure it out. No, it doesn't work that easily, unfortunately. So there are two things about English that are hugely important that get in the way of understanding the language. So in every language that someone's learning, there are challenges with understanding if you're not familiar enough with the grammar of the language, the vocabulary of the language, how fast people speak, accents, everything else. But English, as I think most of you know, is a language where the relationship between the sounds and spellings is really out of whack a lot of the time. Yes, we do have spellings that have certain sounds pretty consistently, but we also have many spellings for the same sound and many sounds, right, with different spellings. This makes English very interesting, but also very frustrating. So raising awareness of sound spelling relationships, the different ways to do this. I'm going to talk today about using rhyme and also minimal pairs. Then the second thing about English that is very challenging for learners is the fact that it's stress-timed and reduced and connected speech, right? We have this stress-timed language that the words that are not stressed shrink and link. So I call this shrinking and linking, shrinking and linking, to demonstrate the stress-timed nature of English. Dictations. If you think dictation is a stressful, boring, old-fashioned activity, then you are in for a treat. Not just from my explanation, because I'm not going to be talking about it enough, but if you think, oh, wow, maybe I should check this out, go on the internet, start looking up, ESL dictation, EFL dictation. You'll see so many amazing ideas for using dictation. I'm going to talk about just a few of them, but let me just say, dictation for bottom-up skills especially, well, I won't tell you which ones, but especially certain ones I believe that can really, really help using your own material, right? So maybe something that you write yourself to focus on helping students understand certain words, certain sound spellings, certain things with stress, or you take something that already exists, like this song we're doing tonight, or podcast, or news program, whatever it is, and you apply a dictation. Use that for your dictations. Maximize meaningful repetition. The secret, spoiler alert, the secret to dictations, for all the wonderful things that dictations do, in the end, the most important thing about a dictation is, for students to succeed, they need to hear it again, right? They need to, do it again, listen again. It's the repetition in a meaningful way with a goal to, fill in that gap or try to reconstruct that sentence, or, that's the point, to have to listen again and again. In the end, it's repetition more than anything else, having exposure multiple times to those sounds, to those words, those sentences. That's so important. Sound spelling relationships. How can rhymes help this? How can rhyming help this? Well, just take a look. This is the first verse. Is it the man's or the woman's perspective? We already checked that with our students before. Yes, it is the man who starts this story. Again, not in the first person, but yes, his point of view. Look at the rhyming here. Walk, locked. Not a perfect rhyme. Near rhymes are okay. Ooh, world was rocked, locked, rocked. Well, locked and rocked have the same spelling, but walk, you might not think walk and lock sound very similar, almost exactly the same. And then we have talked. So subconsciously, if it's younger kids, or you could do it more overtly with older learners, look, ock, O-C-K, and A-L-K, similar sounds. They had so much to chat about, there was no doubt. Oh, the B in doubt is silent. It rhymes with about. If you have enough repetition with rhymes and you're looking at text like this, you don't have to wonder if doubt is pronounced this way, because you have automatically made a connection. You've made a chunk with a rhyme, right? About, doubt. Sound spelling relationships, when you're looking at lyrics or you're reading poetry, right? It's an amazing way for your brain to recognize how something is spelled and how it sounds without having to focus on, rules or, phonetics. Minimal pairs are also great. The only problem with minimal pairs, they're so powerful, is that practicing with minimal pairs can be not so motivating. Just introducing them, repeating them, not so great. So I made a song called Don't Sleep. Games also, I do a lot with card games in minimal pairs. Anyway, some activity to make it fun to notice, like in this case, the difference between the short I sound in English, I, and the long E sound, E. For most people in the world learning English, there is not a lot of difference between these sounds, because there's the sound E that doesn't exist in English. We don't have E, we have I and E, right? So very relaxed, right? And very stressed. So it goes like this: fill, feel, hill, heal, still, steal, make it ill, keep it real, sick, seek, pick, peak, chick, cheek, kick knowledge when you speak, already seeing words that rhyme also. So rhyming and minimal pairs. Ooh, cheek, speak. So E-A and E-E can both be E, right? Lip, leap, whip, weep, hip, heap, etc., etc. So I mentioned sound spelling relationships as a challenge. Another challenge for listening is reduced and connected speech. So with sound spelling relationships, the problem is what? I know this word when I read it, but when I hear it, I can't recognize it. So we need to make that connection. With reduced and connected speech, it's more, oh, I know this phrase, this sentence grammar, this sentence when I read it. But when I hear it, it doesn't sound anything like what I imagine it sounds like. Well, reduced and connected speech, similar to sound and spelling issue, you need practice. What it looks like here and what it sounds like here, there needs to be a connection. This is huge. Most languages are not stress timed. Those that are not as heavily stress timed as English. So first thing about helping your students have more understanding of this is to point out that the main nouns, verbs, and adjectives that are needed to understand basic messages in English, they carry the stress. This is where the rhythm is for understanding the basic message. That's what we need to do when we listen. Not to chase those little grammar words, right? Not to try to translate, but to really start to notice the words that carry the stress. That's fluent listening. On the other hand, we cannot ignore those little function words, those grammar words, for a couple of important reasons. One is that they offer more precise information, right? So if it's auxiliary verbs that help us know that it is past tense. Also, when we speak and write, we cannot speak with just those stressed words. We need those little grammar words. So I feel it's about, as I put here, listening for the stressed words for fluency in listening, and then helping our learners notice those function words, those reduced and connected words for more accurate English. Where does this stress-timed nature of English come from? English doesn't have all of the different cases, all the different endings for words, for subject, verb, right? We have a few cases, possessive, for example. From what I understand, Old English had many more cases, so you can move the words around more, right? Because you knew, right, the subject was the subject because of the ending on it. So it could be over here, the verb could be there. There was much more movement. But then the cases dropped out of English, most of the cases. And when that happened, word order became more fixed. So you, I think, probably know English as SVO mainly. So we do change word order around, right? We do subject, verb, inversion for questions, for passives, emphasis for negative adverbials, right? We have different times where we change word order, but not very often, right? English has a very fixed word order, but look at this word order and consider the stress. Subject, verb, object. Students play music. Now we already have stew, mu, because each word has one syllable that carries the most of the stress. So if a student knows, not the one who's playing music here, one of your learners knows the word music, but thinks about it as musique, it's going to be hard to catch it when they hear music. That's not so much about sound spelling this time, right? It's much more about where the word stress is. And then we have sentence stress, the subject, verb, object, sentence stress. Take a look at this. Consider the first sentence, right? And then consider the sentences that follow. Consider the fact that in each subsequent sentence, I've added more words. And think about what kind of words they are. They are not content words, right? They are grammar words. Does the rhythm of the sentence change? Because in most languages it would. But this 3-beat rhythm based around subject, verb, object stays consistent throughout. It happens even when people speak slowly. So you can try this with me if you like. Students play music. The students play the music. The students are playing the music. The students have been playing the music. The students will have been playing the music. The students will have been playing the music. Super easy to understand the sentence when it's written, but present perfect, one of the reasons it's hard to get. Look at present perfect progressive. The students have been playing the music for several hours now. The students have been. So helping students, raising their awareness of this is super important. Obviously, it depends on their age, how much you're going to actually talk about this phenomenon and demonstrate it. The younger the learner, the less need there is to do it and more need to just practice. But it's interesting for older learners. It can really help them start thinking when, very bottom up, right? Start thinking when they're listening to English, authentic English, why it happens this way. It can be a motivating thing. Is it always 3 beats? Well, students play music at home. Notice it's not students play music. It moves over to home. These are the most important words. Students play music. Students, music, home, right? But, and this continues, the students play the music at home. But the students are playing the music at home. When we extend out longer, we see it's really 3 beats or 4 beats. In oral discourse, in conversation, it's often this 4 beats. So we don't say, hi, how are you doing? It is really nice to meet you. We say, hi, how are you doing? It's nice to meet you, right? I had really there, sorry. Hey, that's a good thing. Hi, how are you doing? It's really nice, right? Hi, how are you doing? It's really nice to meet you. Ooh, it's still 4, but hi, how are you doing? It's nice to meet you. Slow or fast, the stress is the same. We can also look at the lyrics of the song we're doing, The Right Chemistry. Remember The Right Chemistry? The 2 people who met? First we heard from the guy, and actually, this is still, if you take a look, the first verse, where the guy is giving his point of view on what happened. So I'm going to read this to you, not rap it, so you understand that it's not just about rap, it's not just about singing, it's natural stress in conversation. So she said, all right, he could tell she liked him, but knew she could hurt him even more, even more. He bought some flowers in an hour. He arrived at her door. She let him in. She seemed uneasy. They got ready to leave. He began to wonder if he and she were meant to be. Highlighting stress, much more effective in my experience than trying to show, the linked and connected speech. Show the stress, do the practice, and in most cases, naturally, those reduced and connected sounds will, right, be noticed through reading and put in the back of the mind so fluent listening can take place, focusing on those stressed words. Are you thinking about the grammar features in this song? We're going to talk about that. Take a look. Think about the verbs. Dictations, I mentioned, are really, really great for bottom-up processing. Dictogloss is my absolute favorite. I'm going to give you an example of each of these. Well, the first 3 here we'll have time for. But a dictogloss is when students are starting with, it's the most complete, I think, type of dictation, where students are first not worrying about the exact words, and they're getting multiple listenings, lots of repetition here, and on the sentence level, right? So it could be from a larger text, like a paragraph or whatever, but you're doing it sentence by sentence, or it could be, as an example I'll give you, just based on individual sentences. So first they're hearing it, what in general is it about? And they could be thinking about that, just taking notes. Second time they hear it, just those stressed words. The third time, what about those grammar words to try to make it a sentence? Then what? Compare with each other. I love to do this. Students love this. Do they have the same sentence? What's different? And then when you go over it together, it can be really enlightening. Again, this is not for young learners to talk through all this, but the older the learners are, the better this can help them, I think, where we're discussing, oh, why didn't you hear that little word, that article, that preposition? Oh, it was reduced. Did you catch the most important words? That's great for listening, but you need to notice those little words for when you speak and write. Gap fill, I don't understand when teachers say, well, gap fill is traditional and old and, not a good activity. Depends how you use it. I mean, I can certainly see, like anything, if you just sort of roll it out and you don't do anything, in context and fun with it. But a gap fill from a song, for example, I mean, this is a dictation. The dictation is coming from the song. You're listening and you're writing. And there are many great things you can do with gap fills. For example, an oral gap fill. If I say, okay, yesterday I went to the grocery store and some vegetables. And beep, some vegetables. That's a gap fill, right? Different type of gap fill. It's not listening and hearing what's missing. It's I'm doing the gap, and I can do that for different grammar features, for different vocabulary words, try to predict what comes, and that can be done with no text, listening only. Simple and very effective activity in oral gap fill. Most of us think about gap fill as when you have a text and a word is removed or phrase is removed, and this can be amazing, amazing activity if students want to keep listening. That's really what it's about. Play the song again so I can try to get the word this time. Say it again. I almost got it, right? Or I got that one, but not that one. Gap fills can also be done in self-study, which is really cool. Again, if students are motivated to do them, it's like a puzzle, right? Trying to put the piece in. And if it means I want to hear it again, I want to hear it again, each time they're hearing it, right? It's the top down and bottom up that are both building through multiple listenings. In the end, the repetition, if it's meaningful, is the key. Student control. I mentioned students can do a gap fill on their own at home. If you have a media and students are doing it themselves, they can pause, they can repeat. This is so much easier these days than it used to be before new media, right? Where you can just pause, start, you don't have to rewind the tape or go back with the CD to a certain place. So we should really be taking advantage of this as much as we can, especially outside the classroom where students can do it themselves. And I'll give an example of that. What I won't do, because we don't have a lot of time, is get into pair or mutual dictations where students are dictating it. For example, running dictation, maybe some of you know about, like putting parts of a text on the wall. Student has to run back and try to remember chunks of it and repeat it. It's great and very motivating to have students doing dictations, not just you or some media, but we don't have a whole lot of time. I want to talk more about Dictogloss, gap fill, and student controlled before we stop. So Dictogloss, I call this question dictation, right? Where I say it very natural speed. And again, students are thinking first, what is it generally about? No writing, or maybe some notes. Then trying to get those keywords. What do weekend? And then hopefully reconstructing the sentence completely, or if not, no big deal. Why couldn't you catch those little words? Well, that's the whole point of trying to get the shrinking and linking to be less of a challenge. So what did you do over the weekend? What did you do over the weekend? How did the meeting go yesterday? How did the meeting go yesterday, right? So here I'm mixing some past simple WH questions. I've got a present perfect yes or no question. I've got a present progressive, present continuous yes no question. When do you think you're going to finish the report? When do you think you are going to finish the report? Wow, 14 syllables, but when do you think you're going to finish the report? This is why, like when I teach TOEIC class preparation and students are doing, listening to short conversations and they can't understand anything. There must be so many new vocabulary words, so many idioms. And then they look at the script and it's, when do you think you're going to finish the report? What? I know every word here, right? So that can be a real eye-opener. Gap fill. So this is from the song. Now, is it the man or the woman's point of view? She laid eyes on this, and you can give them hints too, right? About rhyme. She laid eyes on this boy. She laid eyes on this man. She laid eyes on this and was overwhelmed with attraction. She saw he had the exact same Ooh, attraction. It felt right from the, no idea, but if he played her and broke her heart, right from the, so here my gap fill is focusing on rhyme. She knew she'd never recover. She'd promised to wait for a man who truly, recover. But here, what's the focus? Not rhyme. I mentioned there was a important grammar focus in this song. Maybe you have already figured it out by now. Past tense, regular and irregular verbs. So here I've removed the verbs. As I said, so wonderful now that students don't need us to start and stop recordings, and they themselves don't have to worry about that, and it's easier using YouTube, using other videos, spoken things. If you make an MP3 and you give it to them, streaming things, it's just amazing, right? So a very basic procedure students can follow, that you can help them follow. Again, it's the repetitions that are so important. So if they're really trying to reconstruct, the paragraph, and they really want to get as much of it as they can, they're going to want to keep listening. They can look at the text and subtitle script and go back and try to figure out, do more with it. There's also doing it orally, spoken dictation, sometimes we'd call it, right? It's the same thing basically, except not writing, stopping and repeating. And of course, at first, it may be difficult, but then looking at a script, going back, doing it again, trying to go a little longer this time, all right? That can be highly effective as well. The last part of the song. She said yes to a date. At 8, he came to her place. At the club, they danced and embraced. It was so fast-paced, her pulse raced. Then he pulled back like he needed some space. Her heart sank. She quickly thanked him and went home, turned off her phone, and spent the night in her comfort zone. She might have known he wasn't the one. She did the right thing by deciding to run. Or was she a jerk and it could have worked? A cruel fate. She'd found her soulmate. She wanted to believe she'd been naive, not deceived. She thought, when is it supposed to click? The right chemistry, sparks flying, energy endlessly. We tend to seek the person of our dreams. You might find you've lost your mind. Love may not be what it seems. When is it supposed to? The right chemistry, sparks flying, energy endlessly. We tend to seek the person of our dreams. You might decide that love is blind, but it may not be what it seems. That's the end of the song. You can watch this on YouTube, The Right Chemistry. I'll just show you the video with the subtitles. When is it supposed to click? The right chemistry, sparks flying, energy endlessly. Right? So you have the two videos. You can watch one with the text and one without. As I said before, I strongly encourage you to show it without text, work on top-down listening skill, and then do things with the text and video to help students with bottom-up. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. We're going to stop here. We will share the recording soon. Thanks so much for your support of American TESOL Institute. And me, Fluency MC, back with another webinar for English language teachers next month. Featured teachers, July 14th. Ask the experts following that. Thank you very much to all of you out there, live and watching the recording. Wishing you peace and respect. One love. Bye.